Hey, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Frank About Health. This is about maintaining healthy blood pressure in honor of Blood Pressure Awareness Month. This is May 2nd, 2024, and usually Karen and I are together at the Doubletree in Chicago celebrating whatever that month is about. But we will be in 2 weeks because May is a big month. It's Mental Health Awareness Month, and there are many other things that we were going to talk about, but we didn't want to escape our usual protocol of just having our guest talk about, in this particular case, Blood Pressure Awareness Month. So we have Jonny Bowden, Dr. Jonny Bowden, who is a PhD certified nutritionist and is able to talk about how nutrition in particular can heal a lot of our issues. But in particular, we will spend the hour discussing a lot about blood pressure awareness, and then we will look at other aspects like cholesterol, as well as just how nutrition can affect your mental as well as your physical health. But I just thought I would take the time to reintroduce Karen. There she is in Chicago. I'm sorry I'm not there with you today. And at the same time, before I introduce to you Jonny, Dr. Jonny Bowden, I want to issue my usual disclaimer. Keep in mind a lot of the information here that is being shared is quote unquote food for thought. They're not meant to be taken as prescriptions or recommendations of how pressure needs. If you have an ongoing medical provider, such as a nutritionist or even your primary care physician, just continue to have discussions with that individual to help you with what your concerns are. However, if we are able to provide you with additional insight that you can therefore discuss, let's consider that our service to you. But again, they're not the thoughts and views of TalkRadio.nyc or of Frank About Health. Rather, again, a conversation that we are now going to engage in. So that being said, Dr. Bowden, welcome to Frank About Health. I would like you, when you unmute, I would like you to spend the time to give us your overall professional background. I know you've appeared on a lot of media and you have a lot of books out there, and you also have an academic history that's impressive. So I wanted to give you the chance to give that. And then Karen, since you are familiar with Dr. Bowden from your old radio show, I'd like you to add insight into his background as well and give the big picture of what we can expect during the next hour.
Sounds good.
Unmute.
Well,
Okay.
you have kind of introduced Dr. Bowden, and I understand he goes by Jonny. And so that's how we'll refer to him today. And as you mentioned, he's a PhD. He's also been an instructor on the Functional Medicine Academy. So he brings an aspect of medicine to the table also. Something kind of interesting that I think people might like to know, and he can expand on this, but he has appeared on so many TV shows, every network you can think of, Dr. Oz, The Doctors. I don't know if that show's still on. I used to watch it a lot. But over 100 morning shows and podcasts. And he's also been a very popular public speaker. So he speaks on many of these topics. And one, as you mentioned, he's written a lot of books. And one, I think, Jonny, you said this was your most popular book, 150 of the healthiest foods. Well, we can't cover all 150 today, but we can certainly cover some of them. But just as important, I'm hoping that you'll talk about what are some of the most unhealthy foods, the ones that we really should stay away from. So just a little bit of background, as you mentioned, Frank, years ago, many years ago, when Dr. Stephen Sinatra came out with his very first book on women's heart health, how different it was from all the research had been done on men. So he really did some groundbreaking work that was very, very important. And so there were people that he co-authored a number of books with, and he came up with the book, and I see it behind Jonny, The Great Cholesterol Myth. So that is the book that he co-authored with Dr. Stephen Sinatra. And that's how I came to find Jonny. Dr. Sinatra has left us, unfortunately. But Johnny, yeah, tell us a little bit more about your background, and then we want to get into the topic of blood pressure.
Oh my God, you're going to make me do my own introduction. Well, like you said,
Well, we've told them a lot about you. What did we miss?
I have a master's in psychology, which has served me incredibly well in my work with weight loss and clients. And I have, as you said, a PhD in what used to be called holistic nutrition. It's now functional medicine nutrition or integrative nutrition. Very different than dietetics. And I'm board certified. And that's my academic background. And I've written 15 books. 3 of them were, I'm happy to say, bestsellers. You mentioned one. The Great Cholesterol Myth is another, the one I wrote with Sinatra. And anything else is all on my website if you want to read it. I'd hate to waste time on all the things I've done. I'd rather talk about what we can do to help people now. And anyone who's interested in me, please just go to my website. I have a entire bio complete with pictures.
Tons of
Before and
information.
after pictures, what I used to look like in the olden days, what I look like now, and all of that.
Lots of stuff on YouTube. People can find a lot of YouTube segments that you've recorded, and you share a lot of information there. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about blood pressure. When I first reached out to you and talked about the book, The Myth, the Cholesterol Myth, you quickly said to me, blood pressure is more important than cholesterol.
Yeah, I did say that. And let me give you a little context for it, because those things, when you take them out of context, they always sound kind of more extreme than the person who said them meant. Total cholesterol is a worthless metric. Let me repeat that for those who may be startled. I'm gonna tell you what Peter Attia said. Now, Peter Attia, for those who don't know, is one of America's greatest doctors, and he wrote, in my opinion, and I've done a lot of work on anti-aging, including writing a book on it. I think he wrote the best book ever written on anti-aging. And there was chapters in that book on cancer and on heart disease. They were all science-based. He's one of the most science-based doctors I know. He's also a mathematician. And the book is, I couldn't recommend it highly enough. It's called Outlive. And this is what Dr. Peter Attia says about total cholesterol. And I'm going to quote it from memory because I've used it a million times and I couldn't have said it better. And here's the quote. Total cholesterol has as much to do with your risk for heart disease as your hair color.
Whoa.
Okay.
That's pretty strong.
Okay. So if you're talking total cholesterol, it's a 1963 measurement. It's incredible to me that doctors still use that and prescribe drugs based on that. But when you're talking about that and you're talking about blood pressure, there's no question in my mind that blood pressure is a more serious threat than total cholesterol ever was. Now, you could argue that maybe LDL or particle number or particle size or all these other measures that you can get on more advanced cholesterol tests are, in fact, very important, and they are. But I think blood pressure is right up there with any of the lipid tests that you could possibly do. It's a very serious, I never worry about people's total cholesterol. I always worry about their blood pressure.
Oh, very interesting. So I guess the best next question is, what is a healthy blood pressure? I've heard people say different numbers. So what's the range?
Well, I'll tell you what the consensus of the big 3-letter agencies is. It's 120 over 80. If you talk to functional medicine people, we would prefer 110 over 70. I mean, lower is better. Again, up to a point. My wife has genetically, chronically, whatever, her basic baseline blood pressure is about 110 over 68, something like that. Some people are lucky, that's their low. They're kind of born with a kind of low baseline, and God bless them. That's great. So we really like to see it lower than 120 over 80. All the doctors that I hang out with and respect. So yeah, 120 over 80. But then those same standards say 150 triglycerides, which we think is preposterously high. So, again, 120 over 80 is acceptable.
Okay.
But you would like to get it a little lower if you can.
Okay. when does it go to a high level that we need to take some action? And
Well,
what
again,
action should we take?
if you go by the authorized, government approved standards, it would be 140/90. But as we all know, all of these things, high blood pressure, high blood sugar, they're not digital like day and night. They're not digital. There's a transition. So what do you do? 139/89? That's not technically high blood pressure yet, but boy, come on. So you got to look at what's going on, not just when you get to this one arbitrarily decided number like 140/90, but what's the trajectory? Is it climbing up there? Is it very close to that?
Well, what happens? Now, you mentioned your wife's was very low. Mine has always been low. And then just in the last year, it started soaring.
Yeah. Well,
and I thought, what? I hadn't changed anything.
It appears to be very frequent, if not, I don't like to say normal, because normal in this country is very unhealthy. Normal in this country, we now know that 92% of Americans have some marker for insulin resistance, which is, we're not going to talk about that today, but I consider that maybe the most important topic to talk about, because insulin resistance is the metabolic plague of the 21st century. I used to go on podcasts and tell them the figure was 87% of Americans have some degree of that. And I'm sorry, 88%, only 12% metabolically healthy. You can check that on Google. There'll be a million headlines from the North Carolina University data on that. But the 88 figure is obsolete. It is now 92%. So
wow.
92% of Americans with unhealthy metabolic markers. That's something you better look at.
Well, Frank, I guess we better do another show.
No, you got to do a show on insulin resistance. It's the most important topic people need to know about. And it's the most important topic nobody knows about. That's really upsetting.
Well, I know we're going to have to go to break before too long. So we want to come back, though, and talk about the impact of nutrition on blood pressure and healthy aging, and talk a little bit about healthy foods and unhealthy foods. But Frank, back to you until we go to break.
And I just wanted to add that basically, well, yeah, exactly. I wanted to just say that obviously with your big background that goes not only across media platforms and your talking events and your academic experience and your own YouTube channel and everything else that we're going to explore throughout the hour, blood pressure is just one thing that you focus on. You obviously focus on all these other issues, especially people with diabetes type 2. I guess that's the insulin resistance category you're referring to. And then also anyone else dealing with any kind of heart problems that are due to the intake of overuse of food or whatever unhealthy eating is going on. So we will probably more than likely do another show with you. That is a definite, because your background is broad. So it'll be interesting to see how in the next segment we actually focus in on Blood Pressure Awareness Month. Or you know what, Karen, why don't we just relive the last time you had Dr. Sinatra on your radio show and try to do the interview again, but this time with Jonny, and cover all the gamut, because it's still about nutrition. And though blood pressure is the driver of the theme of the episode, it doesn't have to be specifically just about that. Although I do understand, Jonny, that you also believe in a much more functional approach to nutrition. So that is, I guess, the secret sauce that we want to learn more about in the next segment. Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned right here on Frank About Health, as Karen and I, as well as Dr. Jonny Bowden, will be discussing more about a lot of his books and a lot of the nutrition aspects that he is concerned about, whether it's blood pressure or the like, right here on TalkRadio.nyc and on our social media. Be back in a few.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on TalkRadio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills, on TalkRadio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on TalkRadio.nyc.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on TalkRadio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Well, it looks like Frank has frozen. So
enough.
Yeah.
We're starting to screen share Donnie's website.
Frank, why don't you mute? You've frozen a little bit. Well, you've frozen a lot. But
you froze yourself right off the screen.
Right. Jonny, I want to just touch a little bit more on the blood pressure thing. So you said at a certain level, we should start paying attention to it and maybe take some action. What kind of action should we take? Should we go toward medical correction of our blood pressure, try alternative methods? Give us a little bit of direction on what you recommend if our blood pressure does start to creep up.
All of the above.
Okay, then.
I'm not look, a long time ago, I had a client, a celebrity client, a composer, whose work you would absolutely recognize in 1 second, who had written 5 major Broadway shows. And he came in, a director friend of mine, lifelong friend, brought him to me and said, would you please take a look? And he came in, I asked him to bring in a list of his medications.
Mm-hmm.
And he came in, he was about 7 years younger than I am now. And he came in with a walker, walking very gingerly. And he sat down, he looked like an old man. And he had a yellow pad, a yellow legal pad that was about 3/4 filled with a list of medications.
Oh, wow.
And I said to him, has anyone ever looked at this? Have you ever had a doctor? Because he had one person prescribed him something for sleep, another one for depression, another one for high blood pressure, another one for GERD. He had like 15 different medicines. No one had ever looked at the interaction of those medicines. And in fact, no study has ever been done in the world on the interaction of any group of medicines. And we'll probably never have that because there's an infinite number of combinations. So my belief has always been, try to stay off as many medicines as you can. That doesn't
I agree with that.
That does not mean that there aren't life-saving medicines that people should use, but reaching for one after the next, so that you've got this whole potpourri of heavy pharmaceuticals interacting in an environment that's never been studied before. We don't know how the antidepressant works with the pro-sleep one, with the high blood pressure one, with the, there's 50 of them. And in general, I would like to see people on as few medicines as possible, which does not mean I'm anti-medicine or that I don't believe that they need to be used. Now, Steve, of course, who was a medical doctor and had a lot more experience with the medical side of it, recommended a number of blood pressure medications. I myself am on a blood pressure medication. I mean, it's important. You got to get your blood pressure down. You can't walk
Okay,
with
that's a
150
good
over
point.
90.
What happens if we don't get our blood pressure down?
Imagine the ocean waves, and imagine a rock, a big boulder, if you've ever seen on the beach, like when we go to St. Martin, and the boulders have all these little, like, not crevices, but these little, like, indentations. These waves are hitting it time and time again, every single day, right?
Yeah.
That's what blood pressure does to your arteries. It hits it and wears it down, and hits it and wears it down. And the harder it goes and the faster it goes and the more often it goes, the more damage can be done to the arterial walls, the endothelium, the lining of the walls of the cardiovascular system. So you don't want that pounding. Just think of it as pounding. And
then, does it mean heart attack, stroke, all of the above?
Related to all of the above. It is a risk factor for all of this, for CVD in general, cardiovascular disease, atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, all of them, it is a risk factor for. It doesn't necessarily be the single causal thing, but as we know, or hopefully we'll explore with heart disease, there isn't necessarily one singular cause. It's often a confluence of different risk factors.
Okay.
You know, and so it's an important risk factor.
Yeah. Well, you've done so much research on food. Does food impact blood pressure?
100%.
In what way? How?
Well, let's take the Kona Indians in Panama. You had mentioned that your blood pressure was great up until a certain point, and you didn't do anything different, and it starts going up. So for most people, blood pressure rises as we get older.
I did get older. I'm afraid to admit I got older.
The Kona Indians, it doesn't happen with them. They have the same blood pressure at 20 that they do at 70 in general. And so they have been widely studied, like, what are they doing? And in their case, the consensus seems to be they eat cocoa all day long. They chew on the cocoa leaves, and cocoa is a big part of their diet. And cocoa has flavonoids in it. And flavonoids are chemical compounds that are found in fruits, vegetables, plants, all kinds of different things. And the cocoa flavonols are believed to have antihypertensive properties. And there's one example of one dietary component that might make that strong of a difference. Now, in Steve's program, and I hope I can do it justice because he wrote a book about it. It's a very good book. In fact, if people want more information, there are 2 books on blood pressure that I would highly recommend, one of which is Steve's book, 8 Weeks to Lower Blood Pressure, but that's a little old, so there's some of the information on the drugs is not necessarily up to date. And the other book is What Your Doctor Doesn't Tell You About Hypertension by Mark Houston, who is both an MD and a master's level nutritionist. And those books will give you a very good idea of how diet impacts your nutrition, how your nutrition impacts it. And in Steve's lowering blood pressure program, he has 4 components: diet, supplements, exercise, and stress reduction. And I think that all 4 of those need to be talked about and addressed if you're looking at supplemental ways to lower your blood pressure besides medication.
Okay.
And some medications are better than other medications. I like ARBs better than ACE inhibitors. But, that's, again, matters for debate. But there are a number of these medicines that have really positive effects and don't seem to be, have a lot of side effects, like statin drugs, for example. They seem and they do a lot more good than they do harm. So if somebody is not able to lower their blood pressure with quote unquote natural things, and it can't always be done, I absolutely think you should see a functional medicine doctor and get on medication.
Okay. You mentioned cocoa beans. Now, cocoa to me sounds like chocolate. I'm a big fan of chocolate.
Yeah.
So is that
when you get dark chocolate, there will be a number on it: 65% cocoa,
right,
or Cacao, same thing. 55%, which is much sweeter and not as rich in the flavonoids. 85, which is as bitter as you can get. 90%, very bitter. It tastes like baking chocolate, but it's got the most concentration of. So people look often for a percentage that is, you could still eat it. It's palatable, but it also is high enough. And usually around 70% is a good number to look for in cocoa.
Okay. Well, what else? I'm sorry, say that last thing.
Chocolate bars, when it's just about 72%, you're getting a lot of flavonoids.
And I'm learning, I have to admit, I've always liked milk chocolate, and I'm learning to like dark chocolate because of the value that you just talked about. So I think that is very, very important. What are some of the other foods that impact blood pressure that we should either avoid or be sure that we incorporate into our diet?
Well, highly processed food, what's called ultra processed foods now, are the enemy of every kind of metabolic metric of health. They raise insulin, so they are a big factor in insulin resistance. They raise blood pressure. They raise, they do everything that you don't want done in the body, metabolically speaking. So the foods we really want to avoid. I always say the 3 worst foods in the American diet, if you could eliminate these 3, you would make a double-digit improvement in the health of America. Donuts, French fries, and sodas.
What was the third one?
Donuts, French fries, and sodas.
Wow.
There are no good exceptions. There are no good French fries, no good sodas, and no good chips. What was the third one I said? Donuts?
Sodas. Okay. Now, all 3 of those include sugar. So where does sugar?
No, actually, no, they don't.
Soda does, donuts.
And French fries. French fries doesn't.
Well, I guess French fries don't.
I mean, they may have a little sugar, and some of the companies may use them, but you have to remember that starches like Cheerios that have been told, we've been told are healthy for us, are crap, and they turn to sugar faster than you can snap your fingers. So by the time you've swallowed them, you might as well have just taken the Domino's box of sugar and poured it down your throat. So don't think that it doesn't have sugar, because it turns into sugar like that.
And then if you eat a cereal, there are so many cereals out there now that are sugar coated. So
they're candy. You're eating candy.
Well, again, I know we're getting close to another break. So Frank, I'm going to pass it back to you when we come back. Do you want to talk a little bit more about foods?
Yeah,
Dr. Bowden?
We have a whole list of
I do.
Supplements to include, and there's a lot of different things that you can do. And I think one of the most important is the 4th one on his list, which is the one that I am most passionate about talking about. He calls it stress reduction. I call it a broader. It's definitely stress reduction, but it really has more to do with how you live and your relationships with the universe and yourself and other people, because that is, in my opinion, number 1 with a bullet.
All right, we'll tackle that when we come back.
That all being said, when we return, I will have loads of questions. Basically, I think that I really have them speechless. So let's just go ahead and return after these few messages. We'll be back in a few.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on TalkRadio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on TalkRadio.nyc.
Were you an essential worker during the pandemic? If you needed to learn stages of epilepsy, did you depend on advocates? Did you use new innovations to cope with mental and neurological issues? Maintaining high quality of life and keeping good mental health are what we all strive for. I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each week top healthcare influencers, professionals, and innovators answer these questions and more. Stay tuned on Thursdays at 5 p.m. on TalkRadio.nyc, and I will continue to be frank about health with all of you.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on TalkRadio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back. I have a few words to say, and I hope that people are listening to me right now. During the last segment, I was completely shut out of the system, and I had not heard any of the interview. So unfortunately, what that has done is set me to the point where I am completely speechless. I believe that Karen and Jonny were able to really flesh out a lot of the topics related to his nutrition programs, and of course, in discussing blood pressure and other issues, that there was a lot of information out there widely shared. This, however, was going to be the question and answer segment. I don't have any questions because I really don't know what the interview was in detail. So that being said, Karen, I think I'm going to defer the entire segment over to you so that you can follow up on whatever happened in the previous section. But quite frankly, I guess the last resort will be in the final segment when I just pretty much promote all of the various programs and books and information that's necessary.
Sounds good.
So take it away.
Thank you. And we missed you. We missed you. But Jonny, you're a big proponent of intermittent fasting. Now, I think everybody's probably heard that term. Many people know what it means, but a lot of people probably don't. So if you could kind of describe it and then tell us, why is it a good thing? Why should we consider it? You're muted.
Oh, okay.
There.
It's a very good thing. Something I practice regularly. I don't even think of it anymore as intermittent fasting. It's just the way I eat. And it has a lot of benefits, a lot of proven, scientifically backed benefits. If you go to PubMed and look up intermittent fasting and chronic disease, you'll see there's a double-digit percentage of reduction in risk for half dozen chronic diseases that we all want to not get, and which are reduced to some degree by intermittent fasting. As I mentioned earlier, I think insulin resistance is the metabolic plague of the 21st century, and when you fast, your insulin comes down. And there are lessons from the intermittent fasting world that we can all incorporate with great benefit, including to blood pressure. And those are: don't eat between meals, don't snack, don't graze, give 4 hours between each feeding, even if you're not intermittent fasting. If you're doing breakfast, lunch, and dinner, great. Do 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock. You do 4 hours between, let 2 hours go between the last meal and bedtime. If you can just do that.
Okay. What would be an optimal period of time to not eat?
We don't know. People experiment with all kinds of schedules. The most popular intermittent fasting schedule in America is 16-8, which means you basically fast for 16 hours and you eat from 12 to 8 p.m. I mean, I'm just randomly picking those numbers because that accommodates dinner hour for most people want to eat with their family and stuff like that. So you can choose that interval, but there's some evidence that choosing an early interval is even more effective, but it's almost impossible to do socially if you have a family, or if you eat with other people. But if you could do eating from 9 a.m. to whatever, 12, I can't do it in my head, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, from 9 to 5 or something like that, or even a smaller interval, that's probably preferable, but it's socially very difficult.
Yeah. What about taking like an entire 24 hours once in a while? Not
Wonderful.
Really?
Yeah.
Really good for us.
Some of the benefits, like autophagy, which is cellular cleaning, it's a deep kind of detoxification, doesn't really kick in until 24 hours or 36.
Really?
So, well, I mean, it does, but not to the
Yeah.
level it's going to make a real difference. So, people like Jason Fung, who do these really wonderful structured programs to reduce or eliminate diabetes, they will put people on 36-hour fasts all the time.
Interesting. I did talk to somebody recently who was in functional medicine, and they really talked very highly about fasting and going on a water fast and just drinking water.
I've never done that, and I assume that those have benefits, but they're out of my pay scale. I can't claim to have ever done a long fast, and I'm not a big fan of water fasting, and I think it should be done supervised only. And but I can talk about general application of these principles to everyday life, and it just means don't eat between meals and give yourself time in between to bring your insulin and your blood sugar down, and forget everything you learned in the 80s about grazing.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Something else you talked about that I know some people have heard of and maybe others haven't, and that's apple cider vinegar. And I was thinking in something you were talking about that being really a healthy thing to digest or ingest.
It is. I think it's a little overrated. I have some in my refrigerator and use it from time to time, and it's a great thing. And it has some, if you get a real good one, it's got probiotics in it, and it's got enzymes, and it's nice, and it helps with appetite and digestive enzymes and all that stuff. But I don't think it's a cure-all, and I don't think it's a weight loss panacea or any of the stuff.
Yeah.
It's promoted as a lot of things that are ahead of what it really does, but there's no doubt that it does do some good things. And there is some good published research showing that vinegar before a meal helps reduce appetite and lower.
Now, I'll be honest that my father used to use apple cider vinegar, and he said his dad did. So that goes way, way back. And I was going through a period of time where it just seemed like I was having more indigestion than I was used to having. And I happened to remember that. So I thought, well, I'll just make a little concoction and sip it. It worked.
It does.
I was amazed. Yeah.
It has no impact on blood
pressure
that I know of.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit, as much as we can, about your 150 healthiest foods. If we had time, we'd talk about all 150, but we can't. So what's the top of the list?
Let me just be sure that I know what you want me to focus on, because we're talking, if you want to focus on blood pressure, I can talk about what I think.
Yeah, let's stay in that.
But overall, yeah. So in Steve's program, he liked what he called a pan-Asian diet. A pan-Asian Mediterranean diet. It was kind of a mixture of the best of the Asian way of eating, with a lot of fermented foods like tempeh and miso. Miso's a great food. There's something that everybody could use. And I think if there was any light at all between me and Steve, it was that I like meat a little bit more than he does. Now, he definitely would eat a grass-fed steak. There's no doubt. He was not anti-meat. It's just I sometimes eat meat every day. and that was the difference. And that's not a huge feature of the Mediterranean diet, but a lot of people think it's not in the Mediterranean diet, and that is a myth. When we did the book, The Great Cholesterol Myth, one of the things I did, because I never believed the press on the Mediterranean diet. There isn't the Mediterranean diet. You know how many countries border the Mediterranean? 22.
Oh my.
So Turkey and Israel and some of the other North African, they don't all eat the same diet. There's no one Mediterranean diet.
Yeah.
It's kind of a marketing ploy. And there are things about the Mediterranean style of eating that are very good and that we could all incorporate. But there's a lot of varieties that we could do a low grain Mediterranean diet. We could do a higher protein Mediterranean diet. So I think there's a lot of principles from the Mediterranean style of eating that we could adopt, but it's not an anti-meat diet. What I did for the book, for my own research, was I found the most popular restaurants in a sample of about 20 of the 22 countries. Every single one of them had meat on the menu.
Interesting.
So the notion that they don't eat meat is nonsense. They eat, better meat, but they do eat meat.
Okay.
Absolutely. But they also eat vegetables. They eat more grains than I would necessarily like. But I think the part about the Mediterranean style of eating that we miss, that may be the most important part, is the style of eating, the style of the Mediterranean, of Sardinia, for example, and which is home to the most number of healthy, functioning 100-year-old men in the world. And
Really?
if you look at what they do, they make the lunchtime meal one of the most important. They sit around in the afternoon and talk to their friends and share their feelings. They walk everywhere. They eat their big meal in the daytime, as I mentioned. They spend time in the sun. We don't talk about that. We just talk about how much olive oil they drink, they eat, which is one of the greatest foods ever invented. But there's also things that have to do with stress reduction and general healthy living, such as connection and such as the part about that I said stress reduction is the most important. They are experts at stress reduction. So I'm not sure how much of the benefits are coming from that and the style of living and how much is coming from exactly what's on their plate.
Okay. What about fat? You mentioned olive oil. What about other fats? Do you think that's the best fat? And are there fats we should just absolutely avoid?
Well, yeah, of course there are fats we should absolutely avoid. I join many of my colleagues in thinking that the two most inflammatory substances in the American diet, the two most health draining elements of the American diet, are sugar and vegetable oil. So as far as I'm concerned, my original nutrition teacher, the one who turned me on to nutrition and made me passionate about this subject, used to say, you have somebody you want to kill? I'll tell you exactly what to do. Go into their kitchen and take and replace all of their cooking oils with safflower oil, sunflower oil, canola oil, soybean oil. They'll be dead.
Wow.
But they won't really be dead.
No, I know.
They will have so much inflammation, as we do all now.
Oh my gosh, so many
metabolic issues. And I remember, oh God, Kate Shanahan wrote this wonderful book called The Fat Burn Fix. And she went on Bill Maher during the pandemic. And she said, I want to issue a challenge. I would like somebody out there who has been abstinent from sugar and vegetable oil for 5 years, who has a serious case of COVID, to please come forward. Nobody took her up on it.
Really? Wow.
So I'm not claiming that. I'm just saying that these are bad news foods.
I would say so. I would say so.
They are
Frank.
We get 16 times more than we do omega-3s. The ratio of omega-6, which is what's in safflower, sunflower, canola, all those seed oils. They're not even vegetable oils. They're seed. The ratio should be 1-to-1 between omega-6 and omega-3. It's 16-to-1 in most places, and in some places it's 25-to-1. So we are walking inflammation. Yeah. When you want to talk about heart disease and blood pressure, inflammation.
Okay. Frank, I know we're ready for our last break. It's back to you.
We're ready for our last break, and I am going to speak through most of the final segment. So that all being said, thank you, Jonny, for when I look back at the show, I will know more specifically what you talked about. I'm sure it was not only the questions that Karen was discussing with you, but you had touched upon blood pressure awareness. You'd obviously touched upon all the other issues. I do have a personal question about a friend of mine who is having issues with his nutrition. So maybe that'll be something we can share in the final segment. But more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, just be aware that when we come back, we will be pretty much wrapping where you can find information, not just on Karen and Karen Ross Now and hypnotherapy's role is in nutrition, but you'll also learn more about how you can contact Dr. Jonny Bowden if you want any kind of consultation with him. And you'll also get to hear a verbal expungement, if you will, of everything I was going to show on the internet during the commercial breaks. So let's stay tuned right here for this episode of Frank About Health on TalkRadio.nyc and on Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, and LinkedIn. We'll be back. See you soon.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on TalkRadio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to the hard skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on TalkRadio.nyc.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on TalkRadio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on TalkRadio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on TalkRadio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back. For the last 45 minutes, especially the last half hour, you've had the opportunity to hear both Karen and Dr. Jonny Bowden talk about his nutrition programs, his nutrition books, and all about how you can really be mindful of your blood pressure, among other nutrition aspects. I find them very inspirational, especially when I review the video later on and really get on point with some of the things that I was expecting you to say, which you probably did. So forgive me for not catching it.
We didn't talk about supplements.
I have
Okay, go ahead. Hello? You froze.
Oh, okay. You didn't talk about supplements?
No, we didn't talk about supplements. And
all I can say... Okay. All right. All I can say is that basically we will have to do another show. Okay. And it'll probably be at a Hilton or somewhere with better Wi-Fi. I'm personally disappointed because I've had technical difficulties before. Even some of them I look back on fondly because I learned my lessons from it. Yeah. But this, to me, I mean, I'm running the show with Karen. Yeah, and I don't know what was discussed. And that, to me, I take personal shame in that, actually. So the thing is that what I'm trying to really focus on now is just basically promoting the very valuable assets that you have out there on social media, such as your website, such as all your book listings that are available on Amazon.com, copies of your, well, not copies, your actual YouTube channel, where I had a chance to look earlier at some of the segments of shows you've been on, whether it was Dr. Oz or whether it was on CNN or wherever else you've been. You're very respectful in your field. And unfortunately, I don't think that I personally gave you the service that you deserve on this particular episode. I do know that Karen did her best to really foster the discussion. And I hope that those people who had a chance to really absorb your information will actually contact you, because I have the belief from what I've seen in your background that you are someone that people can consult with. So that being said, let me give you an actual real life situation. I have a very good friend of mine who unfortunately keeps gaining weight, but is taking medication in order to reduce his blood pressure. But it's not really adding value to whatever the appropriate nutrition needs are. And while he's being now recommended to take cholesterol medication as well, he was recommended those Ozempic and Wegovy shots, which I know is the craze for everyone now in terms of losing weight, but it's still taking away from the big issue of nutrition. I think there's more of a psychological component involved here, and that's something I wanted to try to learn from you today. Would you have any comments on what possible psychological limitations are impacting someone who might be losing or controlling their blood pressure through supplements or medications and things like that? But what message are they missing in not looking at the appropriate nutrition needs that might be going on? What would be your opinion?
I could never, ever, ever comment on a person I am not treating and don't know.
Correct.
There's 50 layers here that we're missing because it's a friend of a friend,
Correct.
right?
Right.
All my sessions, first of all, just so you know what I do, I don't see people like a normal nutritionist. I don't follow people. I don't look at their food diaries, and I don't see them for continuing. I have what I call power sessions. They're one-time things. We look at the whole person's life, their nutrition, their psychological blocks to putting into practice the information that is widely available. Most people, nobody changes their life because of information. That's a basic premise of, I was once asked what are the 3 things I learned most in my master's program in psychology, and that was one of them. You don't change people's opinion or behavior by information. In fact, they tend to double down on what they're doing. So you really have to talk to each person individually and find out what they really believe about what they're able to do and what they're not able. That people walk around with all kinds of hidden glass ceilings that they impose on themselves without really even knowing it. And sometimes if you can help them explore that and see what they are getting out of remaining in a place they say they don't want to be in, what's really going on there. And that takes a little bit of, really deep conversation and connection and sharing. And we can't really say at a distance, well, this is going on, because I have no idea what's going on with your friend, and I tell them to call me and I'll have a better.
Well, that all.
I'm sorry?
That was going to be my segue in terms of, that was going to be my segue. Maybe I'll have him go to your website where I saw the section
right there
that says make an appointment with me. Would you like to share with the audience, unless you've already mentioned it, so forgive me if I'm unaware of that. Would you like to share with the audience how people can have a session with you, or what else they can find by accessing your website?
We've set it up by, if you go to my website, jonnybowden.com, no H in Johnny, JONNYBOWDEN. There is, and you scroll down, eventually there'll be like work with Johnny. And if you go to that page that's linked, there's a little video of under 2 minutes that explains what I do in the sessions. And if it's something that appeals to you, it doesn't appeal to everybody, but if it appeals to you and you go, that's what I need, that's the people I want to see.
Right.
Everybody is not a great
candidate. That's good to know.
Everybody isn't a great candidate.
Now, either way, I will definitely have this person contact you. I think he needs some advice or input. I was hoping that the show itself would provide. Who knows? Maybe it does. And when I check it over, I could show him and then lead him to you.
Yeah. You really
do you have any upcoming plans?
You're breaking it. You're frozen.
I didn't hear you say that again.
I didn't hear the question.
Okay. Basically, what I was just going to say is, are there any upcoming podcasts or events or any place that people can find you in the near future?
I believe I'm doing the Dave Ramsey podcast tomorrow at 5:00 on Facebook. We're still working out the booking, but I believe that's coming up. And no, I mean, I usually put everything up if I'm about to do something or something, I put it up on Instagram. And so people can usually follow me and find out what I'm up to that way.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll definitely be on the lookout. But like I said, I'm going to definitely do another show with you. I'll talk with Karen about figuring out what the angle would be, but we are going to have much more of a respectable show. Who knows? Maybe whether you're in the Chicago area or if
Unlikely.
Frank, you keep freezing. Sorry.
You're frozen.
Yeah, you're frozen again. Yeah. So I think we covered a lot of the things that
actually do it live and in person. I think even if the technology doesn't pick up the conversation, at least I will. Yeah, I know. And so this is definitely a
Karen, I think you should take over because
I'll take just a minute.
Constantly, Frank.
Yeah. First, I want to thank you, Johnny, and I know Frank is really upset that he hasn't been able to participate better. I'll take just a moment to talk about Karen Ross now. I am a performance mindset expert specializing in hypnosis. Right now, I'm working with a lot of athletes. And they are very interested in their nutrition and doing whatever they can to be healthy. And I help them keep their minds healthy. And anybody who's trying to change their nutritional life and has struggled with something for many years, hypnosis can be a life changer in changing belief systems that we have about certain foods and what we've been eating for a very, very long time. I know that Frank wanted to talk about the upcoming shows, so we'll go back to him, see if he has a better connection. Frank, are you able to talk about some of the other shows coming up? Because I unfortunately don't have that list in front of me. But it looks like he's still frozen. So I just want to thank everybody for sticking with us today. And Jonny, thank you again. And I can pretty much guarantee our audience that they're going to hear you again, because you just brought up too many things today that need follow-up. And we appreciate this very, very much.
I appreciate the opportunity to be on and meet your wonderful audience. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much. Bye-bye. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go back to, it looks like Frank is still frozen. So Logan, we're going to send it back to Talk Radio NYC. Thank you for engineering the show today. And sorry that we've missed Frank like we have, but he'll be around next time. We'll see you soon.